sitting here on a plane. I'm going back again.
Good evening, everyone. This is Carla M from You Got This. Here at the Unmuted Festival. Tonight I'm going to be interviewing Eddie Inc. So please welcome Eddie Inc. G'day Eddie, how you doing?
I'm good there, Carla. You
Good.
good?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming today and allowing me to get a little snippet into your life. You want to start by just telling me a little bit about yourself, a bit of your history.
Well, I go back a few years. I was born 2 years after the war, 1947, in England. I'm a POM, sorry about that. But I've been here for over 30 years, so I feel more Australian than a POM, so, you know. But yeah, I was born in a family. I've got a brother and sister, and we all lived, 5 of us in a house, in a council housing estate in England. And that's really where I grew up.
And when did you come to Australia?
Came to Australia in 1989. And the reason why I came to Australia was because of Chernobyl. When Chernobyl blew up, my wife was pregnant with our second child at the time, and the doctors told her not to go out in the rain. And we thought, well, that's a bit, you know, we don't like that too much. And it turns out there's a lot of radiation right across, you know, England, Europe, the whole thing. So we decided to come to Australia because my wife at the time had a brother living in Australia. So that's why we came out. I'm glad we did.
I'm glad you did too. Yeah. So if we could skip to your mental state when you were younger, perhaps would you like to talk about depression or anything that you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, depression. I unfortunately suffered child abuse when I was young, and so like a lot of other people, it's with you for your entire life and has repercussions right throughout your life. And I was originally taking things like lithium and, you know, this sort of stuff. I don't take any of that stuff now. I tend to be my own person and join things like music groups like Wild at Heart, which is a great place to go and meet sort of like-minded people who suffer from the same sort of things. But suffer's not really the word. You have to sort of put up with it, if you know what I mean. Rather, it's an inconvenience at times. But generally, if you try and keep a positive outlook and get yourself into music, it's one of the best therapies around.
Agreed. Who would you say your musical influences are?
Probably they change. In the very early days, my original was my sister's boyfriend who played guitar and used to bring an acoustic guitar around. And when they went out to the pictures or wherever, I would sort of sneak in and sort of, you know, trying to play a few chords on this guitar. So that was my very first sort of inclination towards that. And then my mother heard me, I suppose, attempting to sort of play these chords, and she bought me a second-hand acoustic guitar for 30 shillings. Imagine, you know, the action on it was higher than the Westgate Bridge, you know, the gap between the strings and the neck. And I thought, if you can play that, you can play anything, you know. So I struggled with that for a while, and then gradually, you know, it sort of got a bit better. I joined a band, and I played in a band which was called Whiskey Ring, and played that for a number of years. And the influences for that were things like the Rolling Stones, Chuck Berry, you know, all the usual stuff that people from the 60s talk about. They were my influences then. And then the influences changed. As you get older, your influences changed. And I was listening to people like Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, of course, but Joni Mitchell, you know, with the lovely guitar tunings. I was fascinated by that. And then I discovered Leonard Cohen, and I was introduced to Leonard Cohen by a guy because I used to work in the theatre years ago, and was interested in the theatre, and the guy who was like running the theatre company, amateur theatre company, wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and I wanted to learn how to write plays. So we did a sort of a swap. So I taught him sort of the few basics on guitar because I knew quite a bit by then, and he taught me the principles of playwriting, which I've done quite a few times and had quite a bit of success with over the years. So it's keep more than one string to, more than one string to your bow. You know what I mean? If you're being creative, don't just put it all in one. Just do lots of different things.
Indeed, indeed. Couldn't agree more. And so, how long ago and how did you come across Wild at Heart?
Well, unfortunately, I went through I arrived in here with 2 kids and my wife back in '89. And then unfortunately, the whole series of events, I got cancer and there was all sorts of things going on. I was working on Neighbours at the time up in Nunawading. And one thing led to another, and I became homeless, more or less. And I was living in a tin shed in St Kilda. This was 1997. And I was an alcoholic, and I was taking lots of drugs. And I realised after a period of time this wasn't going to be the way to go. And I came across an organisation called Roomers, which is for people living in rooming houses, which I was eventually then. And it was like a creative writing. And because of my playwriting and stuff, I got back into writing again and had plays put on, one at La Mama. Then I did a one-man show at La Mama. It's called Whiskey Ring, which is based on the name of the group way back in the 60s. And while I was doing all of that, I sort of was aware of another group called Wild at Heart, and I wasn't sure what that was. So I sort of got in touch with a few people, found out, went along to South Melbourne, met Phil, the guy who runs it, and I just found this whole bunch of people that were like-minded. It was non-judgmental, the group. There was any judgments on people. Had a lot of varieties of mental illness within the group. And I just suddenly thought, oh, wow, this is where I belong, this is it. And so that's why I'm speaking to you now, really, because of Wild at Heart.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing place, pretty amazing people, full of talent and love, I find. So how long do you reckon you've been going to Wild at Heart?
Ooh, good question. It's got to be 10 years, I would think. It must be 10 years. I mean, there's a big record somewhere when I first turned up, and I'm a bit vague about a lot of that. That's one of the problems with getting older, but also things merge into each other, and I feel like I've had several different lives, not just one. I feel I've become different people at different times. And so things get very blurry. The definition between the eras and that, it's just not at all easy to pick out. The other thing I find is, of course, with coronavirus, I've been, like everyone else, isolated. But because I live in a rooming house, I'm sort of isolated already. So it didn't make a massive amount of difference. The only difference is I wasn't able to get to the Wild at Heart songwriting groups, and that's been a real bugbear since, I think February, was the last one. That's when they were on this year. So it's quite a while now since we've been doing it. So I'm very rusty.
Yeah. So what have you been doing since we've had this?
Well, I've been started on my second album. I've released my first album back in 1970. Not 1970.
2017.
17.
Love it. You look good for your age.
Yeah, 3 years ago. It is my age. Yeah, it is. And not speaking to people for a long period of time is what it does to you. This is what I meant about being rusty. And you don't realise it until we do what we're doing and we sit down and talking to someone. The other thing, of course, I've not been to the barbers for a long time because of they're all shut, so it's all getting a bit straggly at the moment. So, what was your question?
I can't remember. So, Eddie, you were talking about your first album, which is called Finally Landed. Great CD. Absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you.
And so how do you come up, what's your process for writing songs? Do you come up with lyrics first? I know like most of your songs are a real like story being told. That's why I like them so much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that came from the Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie was a storyteller. He sort of was a hobo really on the railroads and traveling from state to state and county to county and, singing songs, which really were messages. And so really, I've liked that aspect of the lyrics of some sort of story. How I get there, it's quite a convoluted sort of process, really, because there's no magic formula. What I tend to do is I tend to, like most writers, you have a notebook nearby, and little phrases or things that just come out of nowhere that strike you, you just drop them down. They don't mean anything at the time. And then gradually, it's like, you know, when an oyster, when you get a pearl out of an oyster, you get that little bit of grit and the irritation, and then that the oyster's trying to overcome the grit by coating it, and then you end up with a pearl. And that's really what the songwriting is. You get that little bit of grit, that little phrase, that little something that you grab hold of, and you then marry that up with, because I do a lot, I mean, I'm sitting here with the guitar now, I'm not really going to play very much, but I do a lot of what I call noodling. You know, you just sit around noodling away, and then suddenly you'll connect and say, oh, wait a minute, that little phrase goes with that line. And that's how it sort of gradually sort of teases out. I don't write the entire song. What I tend to do is I write one verse and a chorus, and then I use somewhere like Wild at Heart with these songwriting classes to sit around and share it with people and get feedback. And then if it feels like I'm still on the right track, I then flesh more verses out and turn into a story, and hey presto, you've got a song. And that's the way it sort of works with me.
Yeah.
The other aspect that comes in, I'm not really a singer as such. I'm probably more of a writer than a singer. And so I have trouble with keys. And so the other thing I do is experiment finding what's a good key to sing it in.
Yeah.
Now, if you've gone through a whole bunch of chords to write the song, the best way to change the key is, rather than change the chords, use a capo on the neck, and then you can adjust it, you get it where you're comfortable singing it. And that's sort of pretty much the process I use.
Okay, I like it. It's interesting to see the way things pan out. What do you got coming up for? What's Eddie Inc. got coming up?
Well, I've got a brand new album coming up. It's so new, it hasn't really got a title yet. Although the title we seem to be working on is Homegrown, and that's Ohm as in OHM, which is a unit of electrical resistance, particularly with speakers. And grown is spelled GROAN, so it's homegrown, which sounds very much like homegrown with the substance. Mary Jane, I think it's called colloquially. So really, that's how that title came along, but mainly because a lot of the songs came out of a time when I was really sort of addled with drugs and alcohol, and so really that's why that's a strong reference, and also the reference to home. I know with this pandemic, a lot of people are sort of sick of being at home. But nevertheless, that home is, you know, usually where the heart is, where your head is, where everything is the home. So that's really where the basis of the songs have come from, is that sort of home feeling.
Indeed.
There's 11 tracks on there, and you know, I'm really looking forward to. It's not going to be released as an album straight away. What we're doing is releasing individual tracks, so getting tracks to be played here and there, so little teasers to be put out. And I think one of the tracks at the moment is on Facebook at the moment, and also on Bandcamp. Not that I know much about all that sort of stuff, because I've got very poor eyesight, and so I don't use computers because I can't really see what I'm looking at.
Fair
so I
enough.
leave that to other people.
I can relate to that. And so where you said you got some tracks on Bandcamp and wherever else it was you said, sorry.
Facebook.
Yeah. How can people find you if they want to have a listen?
Well, that I'm not too sure about at the moment, but start with Facebook, because I know that one of the tracks is on there, and whatever Bandcamp is going to have a look on there. But it will gradually be released, and the album will be released at some stage. But
Okay.
it's because of the pandemic, it sort of got halted in terms of the production. All the songs are recorded, but they're not entirely mastered yet. So there's still some tweaking to do. That's why I'm a little bit cagey about where can you buy it, because it's not quite ready yet. But nevertheless, we're putting out 1 or 2 tracks. So if you go to Facebook or Bandcamp, you'll be able to find something there.
So that'll be
Also,
Eddie
I've
Inc.
got
at
a
Facebook.
website as well. Sorry, I've got a website as well, but I don't know if it's still up and running again because I don't even have a computer. But it's eddieinc.com. There might be stuff on there, I don't know. Certainly the old album would be on there.
Okay. And so on Facebook, that people just look up Eddie Inc.
I presume so. As I said, I don't know.
Excellent.
I don't have a
We
computer.
might have a look at that afterwards and find out. That's fantastic. So how do you think, or has Wild at Heart changed your state of mind?
It's changed it in the fact that when you meet like-minded people, it's a bit like joining a club. You suddenly you feel like you belong. And that's really what it is in a way. It's like a club, and it's completely non-judgmental. If you go there, there's no one any judgment about anyone. It's just full of love, and everyone's concerned about everyone else, and it's just a good mix of people. The only drawback with it, if it gets too big, it loses that. It just becomes too big to handle. And I found that prior to the pandemic, it was starting to get just a little bit big. It was like classes of over 30. That's getting a bit big. When I first started going, there's about a dozen people, and that was an ideal number. The reason being is because they have a lot of mentors and tutors who come in, and we have a one-to-one. So you get 15 minutes one-to-one with someone. Of course, if you've got 30 people there, that's it's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, it's a shame you're not on Zoom because we get a lot longer now. It's great.
Apparently, yeah. Although I don't know because no one's contacted me at all, so I don't know what's happening with Wild at Heart with me at the moment. I've not heard from anybody. So
okay,
it's because I'm not on Zoom. You see, if I'm not on Zoom, you don't exist.
Eddie, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your life with us, and it's been fantastic to talk to you. And yeah, all the best for the future. And I'm going to take it out with a couple of songs from your album Finally Landed. So
Okay.
sorry.
Well, it was just nice to speak to you. Nice to speak to
Thank
you.
you.
Nice to speak to you. Given the coronavirus, it's just nice to speak to people.
Yes, indeed. So the first track we're going to go out with is called Finally Landed, the same name as the album title. And then we'll go straight into Terminally Single. So cheers, Eddie. Au revoir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Sitting here on a plane, I'm going back again to a place that I once knew. Hey, it's been a while, yes, since I've seen you smile. Going back again to see you, just like a feather floating down, blown by the wind, swirling around. Been a long, long journey to get to where I am. Finally landed on the ground. I had no reason to live, had nothing left to give, gone for all eternity. Would it really hurt my pride, yeah, to have you by my side? Something I could never see. Just like a feather floating down, blown by the wind, swirling around. Been a long, long journey to get to where I am. Finally landed on the ground. take the smooth with the rough. Have I traveled far enough for my tears to fall? To feel is to be a human being. What I feel is not what I'm seeing. Yeah, should I be here at all? Just like a feather floating down, blown by the wind, swirling around. It's been a long, long journey to get to where I am. Finally landed on the ground. Finally landed on the ground. Finally landed on the ground. I am terminally single. I live life on my own. Somewhere in the distant past, seeds that I have sown. Yeah, I don't get out much now. I travel down memory lane, living in the past like that, and drive a man insane. And now look to the future, whatever that may bring. Content to live my life right now, and happy just to sing. I am terminally single. I live life on my own. You won't find me texting, speaking on the phone. Keep myself to myself, the way that people do. If someone were to come along, I might change my point of view. And now look to the future, whatever that may bring. Content to live my life right now, and happy just to sing.